There it is. There we go. It's always something with the technology. Sometimes the microphone is muted, sometimes it's not muted. Mean Green, thank you very much. For those of you hopping on board, we got some people already kind of coming on here. Good evening. I'm John Phillips, Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. We're going to go supersize tonight, at least 90 minutes, probably 2 hours. I think it's it's very well needed to spend the next couple hours talking about Mike Tomlin, who earlier today, just around 2 o'clock, it was announced that he is not coming back as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers after 19 seasons at the helm. A massive day in the city's history. Thank you very much, Mean Green. Much appreciated. You're going to get an associate associate producer credit for helping me with the sound. So already getting some people jumping in here, and that's great. Excited to be able to talk to maybe some new people for the first time. We cover a lot of Pittsburgh sports here, and our shows are going to increase as Pittsburgh Sports Tonight will continue to happen on Mondays and Tuesdays. We'll probably have a show tomorrow at 7 o'clock for an hour, just because of the historic nature of what happened today with Mike Tomlin, obviously. And so we'll do 2 hours tonight, an hour tomorrow, return on Monday and Tuesday on a regular basis, but we're going to expand probably to 4 days at 7 o'clock here in the next few weeks. We'll make that schedule happen once I figure out my daily schedule, which is okay right now, but it's going to get pretty chaotic here in the next few weeks. So, Mike Tomlin, how did we get here? How did we get here? Right? It's easy to say, he hasn't won a playoff game now in 9 seasons, right? But how did we really get here? Because Tomlin had full and total autonomy of this franchise, right? And it was a precedent that was set not during the Tomlin era, where the head coach wielded such incredible power, right? Tomlin was essentially de facto director of football operations, right? Everything about the football team was a reflection of Mike Tomlin. I think that's something that should be stated right out the get-go. The rosters, the staff, everything. It all had his fingers on it. And that was part of what the franchise had established with Mike Tomlin, with Bill Cowher. Okay? When Bill Cowher was in charge many, many years ago, he got into a battle with Tom Donahoe, who was essentially the GM at the time, and won a power struggle with Donahoe, who was later then fired in January of 2000, and Cowher assumed full power of the football team. They brought in Kevin Colbert, and kind of did Cowher's bidding. And that was when they established this precedent that, a coach that is successful should be able to have full reign of the franchise. You can you can talk about whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll get into that in a few moments. But Mike Tomlin, as he became the head coach of this team in 2007, and again, his ascension was rapid. It was like a rocket ship, right? Russ Grimm pretty much had the job wrapped up, right? Grimm was on the staff of Cowher, and it looked like he was going to become the head coach. In fact, there was a report came out, one of the newspapers, that said he would be named the next head coach. And then all of a sudden, this young defensive coordinator out of Minnesota, a whopping 1 year under his belt as a DC, who improved his defense by a staggering 17 yards per game in his first year, blew the franchise away in the interview, and boom, they hired him. Okay, Mike Tomlin becomes the head coach, and within the first 4 years makes 2 Super Bowls with a roster filled with guys who had already been to a Super Bowl under Cowher. First 4 years were fantastic, right? Yeah, they lost a Super Bowl to Green Bay. They were destined to win that one, much like the Steelers were destined to win the one that they did in 2005 as the 6th seed. It became such. And then after that Super Bowl in 2010, and I was at the Fan at the time, okay, I was doing evenings and late nights, filling in all over the place. I had a special Sunday night show after Sunday Night Football all season long. When the Steelers Super Bowl game came down to the wire and they ended up losing, I ended up doing some late post game that year. I enjoyed my 6 years at the Fan, but you thought, okay, he's 4 years, 2 Super Bowl appearances. This is good. We have a leader. We have somebody that clearly knows what he's doing. He's in charge of the players. He can get them to perform. He's getting them to, knock things out and win games and get into the playoffs and go deep and make these big runs. And then after that run in 2010, it took 5 seasons to get to another playoff victory. 5 seasons. And that it was within those first 5 seasons, right, between 2010 and 2015, that we started to kind of see layers beneath the top of the onion, right? If you've ever heard people say, peel back the onion and you'll get to the stink. It was in that run between 2010 and 2015 that we started to get to really get a feel for what Mike Tomlin was as a head coach. We started to see some kinks in the armor, okay? And Mean Green will get to who could replace Mike Tomlin a little bit later on in the show. I have some thoughts on that for sure. So here we are between 2010 and 2015. If you remember the 2011 season, that was the Tim Tebow incident, right? That was when Tim Tebow, threw the pass to Demaryius Thomas, the 80-yard touchdown. I think it was on the first play or second play of overtime. And, of course, the Steelers, who had a much better record than the Broncos, they won a very weak AFC West. They, of course, knocked the Steelers out of the playoffs that year. Well, it would go on and on, would it not? Like in 2012, 2013, no playoff appearances. Right, 2014, they get to the playoffs and they get knocked out. And then finally in 2015, they get a playoff victory, okay? They get a playoff victory. And then in 2016, they make a run to the AFC Championship game. So, again, it took a little longer, gets back to the Conference Championship game. They, of course, go to New England and get blown out. Then the wheels kind of come off, do they not? The wheels kind of come off of Mike Tomlin. So after losing to, Denver in 2011 and as I mentioned, in 2011, they go through 2 seasons of 8-8. They don't make the playoffs. They lose to the Ravens in a wild card in 14. Denver in the divisional in 15. They won a home playoff game that year. And then, of course, that was the last home win against the Miami Dolphins. And then, of course, the 2017 season was where they had that great record of 13-3, right? So, they come off the AFC Championship loss. They go 13-3, but they don't get the number 1 seed. And who do they face in the divisional? The Jacksonville Jaguars. They face the Jaguars, and they get pummeled. They get pummeled at home, and that's when people started to really take notice when it came to Mike Tomlin and what exactly, were his warts, if you will, as a head coach. Issues with clock management, issues with sub 500 teams, issues with, challenges. When to use a timeout, when not to use a timeout. These things started to kind of, creep up on a regular basis through the course of a season. And by 2017, okay, a lot was expected out of that team. A lot was expected out of that team. They won 13 games. That was the Jesse James, did not complete the catch against New England, right? That was the season when that went down. So, Tomlin, of course, suffers under this. Then after the divisional loss, they go 2 years without making the playoffs. Okay, they go 2 years without making the playoffs at 9-6-1 and 8-8. And then the bad run of playoff games really start to put the wheels in motion here on the back end of the Mike Tomlin era. The COVID loss to Cleveland at home where they get just blown out. Then they go to Kansas City where they were, tied after a quarter and then took a lead about 5 minutes into the second quarter on that strip Patrick Mahomes, and then T.J. Watt picked it up and ran it in for a touchdown. Then they got boat raced by Kansas City from that point on. They missed the playoffs in 22 with a 9-8 record, and then three straight playoff appearances that all end in wild card losses, blowouts at that, the Buffalo Bills game, Baltimore, and then last night, call it what you want, they were only down by one at the half, and at the end of the third quarter, it was 10-6. But the way things just kind of unraveled in the fourth quarter, the way it did was kind of the undoing here. And Mike Tomlin had enough. He had heard enough, and I think he has had enough. And, no coach is immune. No coach is immune to hearing the noise outside the building. And it became very evident in that Bills loss at home when they got just trampled by Buffalo on the ground, right? Setting a stadium record for an opponent rushing the football on them, right? And then, of course, the booing of Renegade. They didn't even play Renegade last night in the fourth quarter. That just shows you something, right? What does that tell you? And then, of course, the fact that, they just get blown out at home. Worst playoff loss in Steelers history. Worst home playoff loss in Steelers history. Ties Schottenheimer's record of 9 one-and-dones, right? Sets a record or ties a record for most losses by 20 or more. All of these dubious distinctions, right? 5 straight losses to teams of sub-500 records with 8 or more losses than wins. That only one other coach has ever done that. That happened earlier this year in that loss to Cleveland a few weeks ago. The sub-500 losses, games in New York, games in Oakland, right? Games against these teams in the division, Cincinnati or Cleveland for that matter. Las Vegas is in there somewhere too. The Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, they're in there too. It all just kept building and building and building. And Mike Tomlin apparently today, according to reports, was in that building at 5:30 this morning, and I think within the first couple hours, a decision came down. And here's why. This morning, I had to get up super early. I had to put some people to work downtown Pittsburgh because that's what I do. I help people. I put people to work. And my good friend John Murgis, professional sports gambler for 40-plus years, connected guy, right? Did numbers for the mob in Chicago many years ago. He's retired now, lives in Florida, lives a pretty quiet and nice normal life as he's in retirement. I'm in my car and I stopped to go get some gas. And this is about 7:30 this morning, and I open up X, and here's what I see from John Murgis. And I'm pumping gas and I'm reading this. This is at 7. He put this out on X at 7:20 a.m. this morning. You can follow him on X at Murgis John. Early word out of Pittsburgh headquarters indicating Mike Tomlin will be fired today. Okay, well, he stepped down. More on that in a moment. Aaron Rodgers is going to retire. Losing 7 playoff games in a row didn't help Tomlin. Paying Rodgers $20 million, and if you go and you look at the real numbers of the contract that Aaron Rodgers signed with incentives about 19.5, paying Rodgers $20 million for the season was ridiculous. Soon Adam Schefter, and here's the part that really later hit me at 2:00 when the story all finally came out. Soon Adam Schefter will wake up to confirm. And again, look at the timestamp, 7:20 a.m. My man John Murgis is tweeting this. I was like, oh my God. and I wanted to text him early enough because obviously he was up. And I don't even know if I sent him a text that early. I might have. Now that I think about it, I'm actually going to go back because he's going to be on the show here in about 15 minutes, and I'm trying to figure out. Oh yeah, so this morning, it was around 7:54 because I got in my car and I'm like, oh my gosh, and so I started driving to where I was supposed to, and I got settled and And then I text him and I just said, hey, where are you hearing this at? And then we got on the phone about 11:30, and he explained to me what he did, and he's going to come on here in a little bit and talk a little bit more about that. But that right there is the secret sauce, because at 2:00 it was Adam Schefter, and there was one other reporter too, but it was Adam Schefter. His initial report was the one that broke the story that Mike Tomlin was stepping away. So I thought that was interesting, and that's how my morning started, seeing that. And John's been on X for a period of time now. I don't think he's got a giant following on X. He's got about 11,000. That's a decent number. I mean, I've only got 430 people following me. John's got 11,000 people following him on his X account, and that was a pretty big deal. That was a pretty big deal. And John's not a reporter, but John knows people. Guy's been around a long time, connected guy, gambling guy, knows people in every city. So we're going to bring John Mergis on here in about 15 minutes, and we'll have him come on and we'll talk about where he got his information, how he came about all of this, putting it out there for people to see. I thought it was interesting, and we're going to bring John on here in just a little bit to talk about the news that he kind of broke early this morning. And not a whole lot of people saw it, but I saw it, and I was like, my goodness, what a story. And it turned out to be true. Okay, if you have comments, if you're on our X page, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome to Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. My name is John Phillips. We do all kinds of shows here on our little channel here. We are expanding the programming. We have shows 4 nights a week. On Mondays and Tuesdays, it's Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. On Wednesdays at 8 o'clock, it's the Pittsburgh Sports Desk. On Thursdays, we do a weekly show called Gridiron Weekly. Those are both hosted by Bill Akins, and I am going to be bringing the Pittsburgh Sports Tonight to people 4 nights a week here real soon, in the next few weeks. We're going to do more programming as the spring unfolds. We've got some big announcements coming down the pike. I anticipate us doing some more. I anticipate us doing pregame shows for baseball. I anticipate doing shows extensively for the NFL draft, and I think 2026 is going to be a big year for us. I really want to continue to grow the programming that we're doing. I think there's definitely space for us, and hopefully you'll continue to enjoy us and come back and like and subscribe to all of our social media sites, please, especially YouTube. I want to build our YouTube channel up. If you're already on X, thank you very much. If you're just checking us out for the first time, give us a follow. We try to provide daily content. I'm a one-man band with some other guys that are helping out, but we will get there. We will continue to build. I bring daily commentary. I write articles on our Facebook page, provide content for TikTok, X, YouTube, and Facebook as well. We like doing the live stuff. I'm a live guy. I've always been that way, mostly because of my background in radio and television. Okay, been around long enough in this market, and I've covered, I covered Cowher during his career. I was there at the beginning of his career. I was at Cowher's first scrimmage in Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania in the summer of 1992. Me, Sam Nover, who else was there? All the guys from Channel 4 were up there. I caught the end of the tenure of Chuck Noll. I was in college at the time. But I was there for Cowher's very first practices and scrimmages. I used to work at the flagship over on Ardmore Boulevard back in the early mid-'90s. I produced Steelers football and covered games, and later did evenings when the station went all sports. So, I've been around quite a long time. And have done television, worked at Channel 11 with John Fedko and Sam Nover for many years, as my wife is trying to call me right now. But this is a historic day. Historic day in the city of Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin stepping down. Now, how did that all happen this morning? I have to believe, and again, I'm speculating, and we have a lot of people that, and I've heard Paul say, hey, he's been thinking about this for a few weeks now. Mike Oste kind of said the same thing. I think that this morning, if he got in as early as he did, I think last night there were probably some conversations with Art Rooney. And then this morning where I think, is the extension going to be settled? Am I going to get an extension? Perhaps. I think that might have played some sort of role in this final decision. The team has made it clear that it was his decision, but like Bill Cowher stepping down, Bill Cowher wanted more money. Dan Rooney said no. Bill Cowher stepped down, right? Chuck Noll went through a couple of rough seasons in 90 and 91, and Dan Rooney came in and said, you're stepping down. I have to believe Tomlin, it certainly had to be on Tomlin's mind. I don't deny that one bit. I don't deny that Mike Tomlin has been probably weighing this for the last few weeks, especially since the Bills loss, right? I'm certain of that. What I think might have helped this is that I think maybe Art Rooney told him that the extension was not going to come, and that made this an easy final choice for Mike Tomlin, right? For him to step down and walk away, I think there was something there. I think that we all can agree that the team wasn't going to wait until March, the March deadline, to extend Tomlin. We've speculated about it for weeks now. Logical thought in this process leads you to think that conversation had to have happened somewhere between the end of a game last night and after the press conferences and the players got all taken care of and the media got out and the players left. If Tomlin was around to talk to Rooney at that point in time and said, I'll be back in a few hours, goes home, comes back at 5:30 in the morning, ownership is there, they probably sit down and talk, because John Murge is tweeting this at 7:20 a.m. Within those 2 hours, something had to have been worked out at that point in time. That's why I'm excited to have John on here in a few minutes. He'll jump on. We'll try to, gauge when he got this information this morning before 7:20 and how this all kind of played out. I'm kind of curious to hear what he had to say. And I think that is a plausible scenario, a plausible scenario in all of this for Tomlin to make this decision, possibly hinged on whether or not this team was going to extend him. My 2 cents. I can't think of anything else other than that, right? Because Tomlin had it pretty good here, but obviously the last 9 seasons, and especially the last 3, the way they have unplayed, and you can go back to the Kenny Pickett selection as maybe being the final nail in a coffin for Tomlin, because they reached, right? Ben retired. They had no quarterback, right? They had Mason Rudolph, but clearly Tomlin wasn't, even though Tomlin drafted him, Tomlin didn't really care for him much, didn't believe in him. So they reach out and they get Kenny Pickett. Right? They bring Pickett in. They bring Mitch Trubisky in. He's got his good buddy, Matt Canada, calling plays. What a total disaster that was. An absolute abomination, quite frankly. Just that whole scenario just unraveled in front of our eyes for 2 years, right? You draft Pickett, you bring Trubisky in, you draft Pickett, you start Trubisky, then you throw Pickett in. He's got this goofball as an offensive coordinator who had no business having that job, trying to, take him through his rookie year. I don't know how they managed to even make the playoffs the way they did in that season of 23. So, they missed the playoffs in 22. They go to the playoffs in 23. They get rid of, Canada along the way. Rudolph, Pickett gets hurt. Rudolph comes in. Then supposedly Pickett is okay to play against the Seattle Seahawks, and he's like, if I'm not starting, I want to be, I want to be third string. I don't want to, be second string. Like that was that whole scenario. Obviously the rose had come off the bloom had come off the rose at that point in time, right? A total disaster. All under Mike Tomlin. And then, of course, last year with Justin Fields and, bringing in, Moonball, guy from Denver via Seattle. I'm obviously forgetting his name for some reason right now, but point is that it's been an utter train wreck under Tomlin getting a head coach. Russell Wilson, thank you, Russell Wilson. So they bring Rodgers in this year. We really, what were they? No clear path after last year's debacle when they just they took a kid who was 4-2 and they were trying to figure out whether or not they wanted to try to ride this Justin Fields kid, and then they just switch gears to Russell Wilson. It was just a wreck. It was a wreck. And I'm not celebrating Tomlin's demise here, okay? I'm not celebrating like some people are. I know fans are celebrating. Okay, fine. There's some in the media that have celebrated this. Okay, fine. How can you not respect what Mike Tomlin did? 19 years, never a losing season. I know it became repetition to say it, and it became, almost a cliche, right? Because they weren't getting any success, right? In the last 15 years, 3 playoff wins in 2 seasons of those 15. I mean, wrap your head around that. I was digging on research today to find out. I was trying to figure out what head coach prior to Tomlin had gone the longest. Coaches that have won a Super Bowl. 35 coaches have won a Super Bowl, by the way, in the game's history. 35. And what I was looking at today was how many of those coaches that won a Super Bowl, how long did it take before they either quit or got fired in terms of how many years they went without a playoff win. And the closest I could find I looked up about 17 of them. I was like about halfway there, was Tom Landry. He went 6 years without a playoff win before he got fired by Jerry Jones. Before that, it was Hank Stram at 5. And his last playoff win was Super Bowl 4. Eventually, the Chiefs fired him. Tomlin went 9 years. He went 8 seasons prior to this year. And I can't, I'm looking I'll finish the research tomorrow to find who it is. I'm sure it's Tomlin. That he got that long is stunning. And it speaks volumes to the stubbornness of the Rooney family, who's just unwilling to let coaches go. All right? I mean, again, why did Cowher step away? Because he wanted more money, and Dan Rooney said no. Why did Noel retire? Because Dan Rooney said it was time for him to retire, right? That's why I sit here and say I think there's a possibility that this morning win, and John Burgess is going to join us here in a few seconds. That's why I say there's a plausible case to be made that Art Rooney came in and said, your extension is not happening, and thus facilitating Tomlin stepping down, okay? Call it whatever you want. I'm not saying it's a firing, but I'm saying there's precedent with the Rooneys on how they've handled coaching changes in the past, how it's portrayed, and how it actually happens. Okay, let's see if we can get John in here. I know he is with family tonight, and he is making some time for us. We won't keep him too long. He is in the dark, but he sees the light. It's John Burgess.
I apologize. It's Taco Tuesday at my daughter's house, so I had to do this with my cell phone. Can you see me okay?
You're good. I can see you, John. How's your health? How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. Thanks for asking.
Good.
My sympathies to all Steelers fans. Being a lifelong Bears fan, I know exactly how it works. The thing is that Mike Tomlin, this was a generational talent of a coach. I mean, a coach like him comes around once every 30 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was listening to you, John. I believe you're right. The Steelers still hold the rights to Tomlin. So if he were to take a job this year, they would, the Steelers would expect some kind of compensation. Now, you would hope there would be a decent quarterback. I was going over some things. Yeah, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, and I haven't even gotten into that yet. And you're right; they hold rights to him for at least this year. And also, hey, generationally speaking, look, they've only made like 4 hires since the 50s, I think it is.
Yeah.
I have the notes here. Since the 60s with Bill Austin, they've all been in their 30s. Austin obviously didn't last very long, but Tomlin obviously had a great run, and I'm not denying that in any stretch of the imagination. And I'm not sitting here gleefully saying I'm glad he's gone. I've been saying this since the divisional loss to Jacksonville that they needed to make a change, and that was early on. And people, they called me all kinds of names, and that's all well and good. I saw a lot of the flaws, and look, coaches have flaws. But at that point, you're 7 years removed, and you're starting to see some things that you don't like. It took a little bit longer than I think maybe anybody would have stomached around here. But I want to talk to you about your tweet this morning and how you got ahead of this. The report is that he got into the building at 5:30 this morning. So without talking about who you spoke to, when did you come across this information and feel good enough about putting it on your X account this morning around 7:20 a.m.?
Yeah, I could have waited a little bit before I put on the X account because I took the information I had. It was a really good source. The gentleman I spoke to works in professional sports. He's also up early. There's no conflict of interest. He's involved in professional sports. But from what I understand, through a source that he has, last night Tomlin and Rodgers met in the trainer's room. And from what the person that was there, we'll call him the witness, what he saw was Rodgers and Tomlin hugging. Rodgers came out a little teary-eyed. I think he might have told Tom. I think Tomlin might have told him, this is it for me. With that, Rodgers won't play for another coach. A big thing I'm going to say is you bring in a new coach, you bring in a new system, and you got a 42-year-old quarterback. Not going to work. But I mean, you have to give Tomlin credit where credit's due, and I know everybody in Pittsburgh will. I mean, since 2022, I was just going through my notes. As you can see, John, I brought out this is my Pittsburgh Steelers file. Okay, I keep files on all the teams, and there's Aaron right there. But since 2022, you've had Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and then you go with Aaron Rodgers. He didn't have a quarterback to work with. He didn't have an OC that he hired. That Arthur Smith that was Rooney's hire. Tomlin, defensive guy. The last good offensive coordinator comes to mind would be Todd Haley. Would be the last good OC that you guys had. But anyhow, yeah.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say Todd joins us on the pregame every week. He was an effective offensive coordinator. He had great talent, and he certainly was able to use it. John, how did you connect Adam Schefter to all of this? That's the real thing, because at 2:00 it was Schefter that came out with the news. How did you piece that all together?
Well, that was they were going to let Schefter know first. I guess between him and anybody else. I mean, Schefter's the guy that's asking for the news, and they knew that they were going to contact him. And I just tagged him. I said, as long as they're going to tag, I might as well tag him, try to be the first guy out there, to mention this. But, I think they were going to part ways. But the Pittsburgh's a Class C organization, as always has been. And so it was a mutual understanding. They gave Tomlin the chance to just, hey, listen, I'm done. How can you fire a coach after 19 years? The man took spoons to war and won. Not knives. He took spoons to war.
I'm not denying that he got more out of guys that maybe other coaches couldn't. Now, his tenure in the league allowed him to have that cachet with guys, right? I mean, that's part of it. And I've always said, and I think a lot of people have said this as well, that, he does get more out of guys. I used to write for a guy called named Neil Coulong, who ran Behind the Steel Curtain. He ran USA Today for a while, some of their Steelers wire, Bengals wire, Bills wire. He's very savvy and knowledgeable in terms of the online presence of new media and where that's come from. And he and I talked in the fall about that innate ability that Cowher had to get more out of just guys that maybe most other coaches wouldn't get out of him. I've always, we've given him his flowers for that, for sure. Where do they go next?
Over a long period, John, over a long period of time, Cowher was able to do that.
Yep.
He was able to do that. He took talent. I mean, from what I've seen the last few years of Pittsburgh, they went after free agents. They went after guys that maybe their best years were behind them, and he got the best out of them. This all goes back to, and I'll be short, but I think it all goes back to not wanting to hurt Roethlisberger's feelings by drafting a quarterback. When you knew Roethlisberger was getting ready to retire, he had a couple good drafts. You could have picked up a decent quarterback, had a guy sit on the bench for a while, but they didn't because he would have been upset. I don't know. I mean, I follow football closely. I don't know what the internal organization's thinking is. I know that a house cleaning is underway.
Yeah,
they're going to clean house.
Yeah, they have
the Steelers. I mean, I hate to say it. In my opinion, they have to. It's a rebuild now.
Yeah,
it becomes
totally
a rebuild. There's no quarterback. There's no high draft choice. The team's been overall player to player on the bottom half of the league every year. Mike Tomlin took players that shouldn't even made the playoffs into the playoffs through his coaching, through his defense. They made some questionable moves, but they were trying to improve the organization with what they had. So it's just like I said, I empathize with Steeler fans, being a Bear fan.
Yeah.
Without gloating.
Yeah, no, I understood. John, you've been very kind with your time. You're such a great follow on X. I encourage people to go check out your X account. Murges John, Murges John on X. Great job this morning. You got my attention, and I'm glad that I've managed to stay in touch with you for a while now. You're a real source, and I trust you and respect you, man. Great job today, and we'll talk with you soon, okay? Thank you for coming on the show.
My friend. Thank you, John. Good luck to you. Thank you, buddy.
All right, John Murges, professional gambler, 40-plus years, connected guy, right? And I'm telling you, I saw that. It stopped me in my tracks today, and it got the wheels going. And by 2 o'clock, not only was he well, it wasn't right about the firing, but again, that's semantics. Again, the message is it was Mike Tomlin's decision. That's all well and good. We've kind of recanted how Cowher's tenure ended and Chuck Noll's tenure ended under resignations or retirements, and really wasn't the case. We can speculate about that all we want. But again, Mike Tomlin, 19 years, what more can be said about, his tenure? It was successful. At the end of the day, to be able to have more wins than losses in every single season is unmatched by any coach in the history of the National Football League. He's top 10 in all-time wins, right? Again, take away the 400 winning percentage in the playoffs, take away the fact that he only won a playoff game in 4 of 19 years, the dubious streaks that were matched last night. Successful coach, no question about it. First ballot Hall of Famer if he never steps foot on a sideline again, and in 5 years' time he is eligible for Canton. They'll make a bust of Mike Tomlin for sure. All right, Pittsburgh Sports Tonight rolls on. A supersized edition brought to us in part by Arch Masonry and Restoration. Yes, Arch Masonry and Restoration is hiring bricklayers and block layers, concrete finishers, even labor help. 412-564-5733 or visit archmasonryinc.com to learn more about Arch. Okay, without further ado, I'm producing the show myself tonight, so bear with me, folks. Here is a man that needs no introduction. Jerry DePaula, longtime writer, the voice of reason with Steel City Sunday. And he is a voice. You are a voice of reason.
I try to be.
I wanted to text you earlier and just say thank you for your, and maybe that's, your 30-plus years of covering sports, and you were, trained journalist, writer, and, having worked for a few writers in my lifetime, especially the Hammer, that I worked under in Bruce Kyden, as somebody that was just
the ultimate wordsmith.
Yeah. Right. Wordsmith in short, but the thought process, like how your mind works, right? How you see things, right? And I'm always mindful of that, and especially as I've gotten older in the last 10, 15 years, I'm very mindful of how other people think and what their perspective is, because not everybody shares the same vision, right? How they look at something.
That's for sure,
yeah. And so, when we have and folks that are just tuning in, there's about I have about 7 or 8 of us on a group chat in text, and all season long, that's how I've been communicating. And we talk during the games, we talk during the week, big news happens, something happens, we chit chat about things, and it's not uncommon with people around the world. I mean, everybody has their own little group chats that they are involved in. But for our show on Steel City Sunday, Jerry has been very level-headed about things, and today, you were very clear about your thoughts after, I shared my opinion about a few things, and, you were really, I just thought your voice of reason in terms of looking at, you said that, you talked about, how this team was going to come to a conclusion quickly once the season end regarding the option. And look, John, the guy I just had on, I know you don't know John very much from Adam, professional gambler for many years, worked for, knows, we all know some people, right? He knows a guy. But when I saw that this morning, it stunned me, and especially the Schefter thing. And then at 2:00, with the way it all went down as Schefter was reporting it, I thought it was interesting, and which led me to speculate, and correct me if I'm wrong. Right, and I wasn't there to cover Noel at the end. I was in college studying to be a journalist and a reporter and a broadcaster, and I was there for Cowher. I was there for Cowher at the beginning, and I covered him for a period of time, both early on and towards the end of his career. The Rooneys handled those two departures the same way, right? It was a public decision that Noel was going to retire. Dan Rooney said, "You're done." We later come to find out, and I don't know if you know that or not, or if you've heard that or not.
It was done in a respectful way.
Right. It was done in a right. Dan basically said,
right.
Yeah, right. Okay. And the second time when it came to Cowher, he wanted more money, and Dan said no. And so Bill steps down. And
went to TV and make even more money.
Yeah, and he went to TV and even made more money. And I remember the famous quote, about somebody said something about looking like he was burned out, and he said, "Do I look like I'm burned out?" Right. Right? There was that comment. Yeah, right. So the Rooneys have a precedent. For those of us that have worked in media, we understand how they operate. Is it plausible? And I think it is, that somewhere within the last few weeks, and especially leading up to this game and right after, between the time he got to the report is from Brooke Pryor, he got to the stadium at 5:30 this morning. We're talking about Mike Tomlin. He got to the stadium about 5:30 this morning. Somewhere between that time and either right after the game or shortly after he arrived, is it plausible that conversation came up between he and Art, and that it's plausible that Art said can't extend you,
right?
And then and according to Paul Zeiss, right, he's been thinking about this for weeks. Who wouldn't after what happened at the Bills game, and the fans let him know, right? No human can escape it. As much as they try to block it out, you can't escape that, right? And it's been building for some time now, obviously, right? It's been building for some time now. So this isn't just a new thing. Is it plausible that conversation came up and that Art maybe said, can't extend you, and then it made the decision for Tomlin easy to say, I'm not coming back? Is it plausible?
Yeah, I think it's very possible, John. And I think what happened was that obviously this didn't happen overnight. This didn't happen this morning. This happened weeks ago when they talked about what might be going on later on. And I think what happened was the option had to be picked up by March the 1st. Since they didn't do that, they weren't going to do that, and that's what Art told him. I don't think he told him that this morning. I think he told him that days ago, weeks ago maybe. And Mike said, well, I don't want to be a lame duck coach in 2026, and if you're not going to keep me around for 2027. And Art said, well, we don't like to have a lame duck coach either, because I know Dan didn't want that kind of situation. And I think that's what happened. It came to a mutual agreement that he would step down today. It wasn't exactly a firing, but I think they didn't want to extend the contract beyond the 2026-2027 seasons. And that made a lot of sense considering the way the playoffs have gone the last 7 years. They haven't even been competitive in any of these games that they've lost. And that's not the Steeler way. And I think something needed to be done. Art realized that. I think even Mike Tomlin realized that, and he might have thought it was time to go. But the big thing is now that for the first time since 1956, Dan Rooney is not going to pick the next Steeler coach, and now it's up to Art. And Art's going to have to come up and make the decision along with some other people in the organization, including his son Danny, who's a good football mind, and I think that's going to be a big part of it too.
And I wanted to talk about that. How much do you think Dan might have been involved in these conversations with his dad and Mike?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think, Art is a little bit older than me, I think. So, he's not ready to retire, but I'm sure he wants his son, to start making some decisions in the organization and to be part of things. And, Danny is said to be a very sharp, shrewd guy, good football mind, and he's followed the game closely, obviously, over all these years. And I think eventually he's going to, step into his dad's position as head of the team, the chief owner of the team. And they probably came, all these losses pile up. And the fans, you can say the fans had nothing to do with it, but it's embarrassing, when your coach, when the fans, sit there at that high-profile game on a Monday night and they start booing and say, fire Tomlin. And what if Tomlin was still the coach in April when the draft came to Pittsburgh? And he was still the coach, and all these hundreds and thousands of people are converged on the point in Pittsburgh, and they're all chanting "Fire Tomlin" when the NFL is trying to conduct its draft, and they didn't want this thing to go beyond the option. Whatever decision was going to be made on Mike Tomlin's future had to be made before March 1st, and I think Art didn't want this to linger, and Mike Tomlin didn't want this to linger, and that's what happened. Finally came to a head today.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there was a meeting of the minds, that they've been talking about this for a while. It's very possible that Art had already made up his mind and maybe told Tomlin this, and the way things unfolded last night made it an easy decision. But they've had to have had this conversation at some point in time. I want to believe that something happened last night. Like I really think not just that, but I mean, I think that there was a point in time where that this conversation probably happened, and it was like, hey, look, you don't perform well in this playoff game. It's, we're done, right? Like this, we're not going to extend.
John, I don't think Art would put an ultimatum out like that before the game. I don't think he would say, Mike, you better win this game or you're out of here, or we're going to make some big major changes around here. I don't think that was put in so many words. But I think Mike had an understanding that was certainly, on the horizon and a possibility.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough. Jerry DePaula, longtime writer at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, still the only daily newspaper, printing 7 days a week, I might add. But anyhow, I digress from all of that. Okay,
former employer.
Yeah, right. So, and yeah, I'm still a contributing writer to some degree. So
yes, you are.
I am. I had to validate that today with the big boss. Just, I'm like, am I coming back? Yes. Okay. I'm like, okay. Crazy world out there, Jerry. You know what I mean? So,
I looked at for me because I'm done.
Chat GPT's about ready to replace me and what they pay me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want that to happen. So, so now where do we begin, Jerry? Where does this franchise go? The last four coaches, and Bill Austin was only around for 3 seasons, they were all in their early to mid 30s. Austin was 37 and 66. Chuck Noll was 37 and 69. Cowher was 34 and 92. Tomlin the same age in 2007. Do they need to go young? Do they need to bring in somebody that has maybe coached in the National Football League as a head coach? Where do you think this search starts and possibly ends up? What do you think they're going to be looking for?
Well, the past three coaches the Steelers hired were all hired as assistant coaches for big-name head coaches. Chuck Noll was with Don Shula. Bill Cowher was with Marty Schottenheimer. Mike Tomlin was with Tony Dungy. And all three of those veteran coaches, those Dundee, Schottenheimer, and Shula, had good relationships with Dan Rooney. And Dan trusted them. And that's why, Dan wanted to hire Mike Tomlin, other than the fact that Mike Tomlin knocked his socks off in the interview. So I think they're going to call in some of their connections around the league, call in some people, find out who the top young coordinators are, and interview 5, 6, 7 people and go from there. A lot of people are saying, I heard somebody speculate that maybe the Steelers and Ravens will just trade coaches. Harbaugh comes here and Tomlin goes to Baltimore. Although I did hear on TV on ESPN that Tomlin is not expected to coach in 2026. He's going to step away. According to the ESPN report, he's going to step away. Who knows, go to TV or whatever, enjoy some time with his family, and maybe come back in 2027. Now, when Cowher resigned after the 2006 season, there was a lot of speculation that eventually he would come back and coach. So he'd find his niche in TV, and he loved it so much, he had no desire or inclination to come back and be a head coach anymore. And he was smart. He's probably making more. He probably made more money with CBS than it would have made with the Steelers, and with a lot less aggravation and a lot less stress on his heart. So I think Tomlin loves the coach. He loved the coach of Steelers, but I think he knew it was time, and I think he's probably looking forward to his time to sit back and relax, put his feet up, and watch everybody else struggle.
And that is something that John Burgess brought up, and I haven't even gotten into it. I mean, the first hour is almost over, and we've been flying through all of this. They control his rights through the next season. I don't know how the option works, right? So I think it's just 1 year. And if Tomlin – he's got 8 jobs to kind of look at. I think he's going to listen to a few people, don't you think?
If you're like I'm surprised to hear that our ESPN report tonight that he wasn't going to coach in 2026.
Tomlin would be smart to listen to Tennessee. He'd be smart to listen to the Giants.
Right.
For what it's worth, he'd be smart to listen. He'd be smart to listen to Baltimore. Did you hear their owner? He was having some sort of interview, and the news went down at 2:00. And I have that pulled. I may play it a little bit later on. He was like, maybe, well, perhaps, I don't know. He didn't like the chest beating thing at the end of last week, but I think it was more of a ha-ha joke moment. But
that was toward the fans, I think, yeah.
And look, Tomlin doesn't. I don't want to say he doesn't owe the franchise anything, okay? But certainly he was plucked out of thin air. And put in a really, really good position to win early on. He inherited a roster with 12 starters from the 2005 Super Bowl win, right? He inherited a coaching staff that was intact, that was, skilled and leadership and experience.
Dick LeBeau, that was a big.
He had Dick LeBeau, right?
Yep.
So he had all I'm not saying that is out there for him, and I'm not saying that even next year that's going to be out there for him. But if there was a scenario where a team looked intriguing enough, doesn't he as a token of measure of thank you to this franchise, tell them, hey, I'm interested in this job, and then this team gets an opportunity to grab. I'm going to use the word. They're going to grab maybe another number 1 pick and maybe a second or a third round pick next year. They get something for him because he does have value. Mike Tomlin has tremendous value to him, right? He's going to get snapped up. Okay, fine. Maybe if it's not this year, next year. But wouldn't that be like his way of almost payback for the 19 years? Because quite frankly, how many coaches go 9 years without winning a playoff game and survive? Right? It was Landry went 6, right? He went 6 before he got canned. Now, slightly different scenario with Jerry Jones, right? But he went to 6 or 7 Super Bowls, right? He won 2, and he went to like 5 or 6 more on top of that, right? Tomlin went to 2 in his first 4, and then the last 15 years have just been a blank canvas. He had a lot of leeway here that most coaches aren't afforded in this league, sir.
Well, now that they've announced that he's stepping down and they put out a news release that he's not going to coach anymore, do they still own his rights? And could they call somebody up tomorrow morning and say, we still have Mike Tomlin's rights. We'll trade those rights to you for so-and-so draft pick or whatever. Can they still do that now? I'm not sure they can they?
Well, I'm sure they're legal. I'm sure within the next 24 to 48 hours, Ray Fittipaldo, Jerry Dulac, right, Adamski, somebody over there, what's his name over at Steelers now, Alan Saunders, right, the guys that have been following this team for a long time. I'm sure they're getting to the bottom of all of that, and I'm sure by maybe if not tonight, by tomorrow, we'll have a better understanding of what the legal matter is regarding his contract, him stepping down, right? Because Sean Payton, stepped down from New Orleans, but he
got
didn't.
A second-round draft pick for him, didn't they?
Right. The Broncos were like, "Hey, we'd like to talk to him." And
but he didn't step down first, did he? He didn't step down before that. I'm not sure the sequence there.
So, hold on a second here. It's so funny because he was one of the coaches that I did actually research this on. Hold on a second here. Sean Payton. Let me see this here. Sean Payton. Won Super Bowl 40. He won Super Bowl 44, fourth season as head coach. Last playoff win was 2020. He retired after the 21 season. He returned to coach
for a while. Yeah.
Well, he retired because of health, right, in 2021. But he was under contract to the Saints, and then Denver approached them. They got some draft picks figured out, and he started coaching again in 2022. So he retired, but he was still legally bound to the Saints. And I don't know the semantics of it all, right? Like, I'm not that deep in the weeds.
Is Mike Tomlin still legally bound to the Steelers?
I would think yes. I mean, I'll ask Paul. Maybe Paul knows. Maybe Paul's talked to one of his colleagues. I don't know. But I would think he still has some sort of he's legally bound. He just can't say, I'm retiring. Oh, I'm now the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. You know what I mean? I just can't see it being that simple, right? Or coaches would do it all the time. I'm stepping down 2 days later. I'm the new head coach and got $10 million more a year of, this team. Legally,
that could happen, but would the Raiders have to send a draft pick to the Steelers for that to happen?
I was just using them as an example. He's not going to
anything. Yeah.
Right. I don't think he would take the Las Vegas Raiders job. I don't think he'd take Arizona. I don't think he's looking into Cleveland. Right. He might look in.
Atlanta, Miami, maybe. Atlanta for sure.
Right. Atlanta, Dome. Okay. Miami. How can you be?
What's not a decent roster?
Yeah. Right. And what's not to like about the weather down in Florida? I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, having lived down south for a period of time, and I hate every moment I step outside and it's 3 degrees out, Jerry DePaul. But, I mean, there's some jobs out there that I think he's going to have an interest in, and I think we're going to see something over the next – let's just figure out the contract. And if he is bound, let's see how things play out over the next few days, because I'm willing to bet there's going to be a team that if he is bound, I'm willing to bet there's going to be at least one, maybe 2 or 3 teams that are going to inquire to the Steelers. Would you be willing for us to? Is he interested in maybe talking to us, or maybe that's a conversation that they have to have with the Steelers first, and then with the agent, right? I don't know how that all plays out, right? You know, what I mean?
The agent will probably contact these teams to see if they're interested in Mike Tomlin,
right? Okay.
And then they'll go from there. And if they're able to work out a trade, if he is legally bound to the Steelers, then maybe they can pick up a second-round pick for him. I don't know.
Jerry, if I'm the Steelers, I'm not giving him up this year for at least a number 1. Well, I want 19 years.
You may not get a number 1 for him, John. And he's always said he's stepping down. So what are you doing then?
You'll get a number 1 for him.
You think?
I think so. Absolutely. I think. Look, if you want him this year, it's going to cost you your 1. It's that simple. You want to wait another year? Fine. They wait another year. It is what it is. But if the Steelers if I'm the Steelers, you want to talk to them, no problem. If you want to sign them, we want a number 1. That's a non-negotiable.
You got to wait 27.
Or you're going to have to wait. That's exactly right, mate. If you really want to talk to him, you're going to pay a number 1. At minimum, a number 1 pick for that man. His resume, for bad or good, is worth a number 1 pick in my mind to give him up this year. And I got no problem with that, right? Because I do think he wants to coach. I don't think he would. I don't know this, right? I'm speculating. I don't know if he would like TV. I don't know. Maybe he'll try it. Maybe he'll
like the paycheck and the less stress. That's what he'll like.
Yeah. Right, and that's what Cowher loved, and he never returned. Maybe that would be the case. But what I'm saying is that if his agent is out there making some calls, and there are some teams that Tomlin would be interested in, and they call the Steelers. If I'm the Steelers, you want them? Okay, we want a number one.
Can you imagine getting 2 first-round draft picks in the 2026 draft being held in Pittsburgh? It'll be even a bigger event than it's already going to be.
And plus, I think they have like 12 or 13 total picks right now.
Right. Yeah.
So if they manage to get a second number one, now they've got an opportunity to move up into a 1 or a 2 spot.
And these teams looking for a coach are all going to be drafting fairly high, I would think, right? So it's not going to be.
They are, and they're sacrificing. I'm not saying that they aren't. But what I'm saying to you is that if I'm the Steelers, I've got to leverage everything I can here, because you do have a draft in 99 days in your hometown. By the way, the logistics of that still haven't been released. I don't know how that's going to work out. Like, where are they going to put 600,000-700,000 people at?
It's going to be crazy. I'm going to watch it from my couch, John. I'm not going anywhere near downtown Pittsburgh then.
I'm going to be in your front yard selling parking for $50 a spot.
We'll split it.
That's it. I'm telling you, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm telling you right now, that's my move if I'm the Steelers.
Because
I'm
see what happens.
certain of it. Jerry DiPaolo, you're so gracious with your time. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on board. It's always great to get your opinion.
I had a lot of fun this season with you and John Fedko.
All right, well, we're going to work to make it happen some more here in the next month or so. Thank you, Jerry.
Man. Nice talking to you, John. Have a good evening.
You too. All right, Jerry DiPaolo, the great Jerry DiPaolo. The great Jerry DiPaolo. As I've said, this has been a vanity project for me, more or less, because I used to work with Jerry years ago. We called high school football games on Clear Channel Radio, AM 970. Working with John Fedko at Channel 11. Worked with Zeiss over at the Fan for 6 years. It's nice to be able to have this little bit of an audience. It's nice we got about 150 of you hanging out on our X page and on our YouTube channel and a few other places. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is John Phillips. This is Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. We're on Mondays and Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. We will be expanding to 4 nights a week by the end of the month. By the end of the month, we'll get to 4 nights a week. We're going to have coverage of the NFL draft for you. Okay, we're going to have that. We'll get our team together and we'll have 4 nights of coverage. But we've got shows during the week in the evening times at 8 o'clock on Wednesdays and Thursdays. You can check out my X channel at Steel City Sunday. Go check out our YouTube channel as well. And please, please, please give us a follow over there. Ethan is king. I appreciate you spending time with us countless hours, Ethan. We hope to entertain you folks. Mean Green checking in, saying the Steelers have hit the mark on the first 3 head coaches. Now they need to hit the mark on this 4th head coach. Yeah, well, again, one thing that this franchise has now, again, Dan Rooney, this is all under Dan Rooney, right? We don't have Dan Rooney, but we've got this new generation of Rooneys that are coming through, right? Art's, again, Art was a lawyer who inherited the family business and has been, in charge for 20 plus years. But, obviously Mike Tomlin has taken the helm and has piloted the football operations side of things. I think, on the other side, there's people in place to keep the mechanisms going with the league and all of the things that they have to be compliant with. I'm not saying that Art's a figurehead, but, as far as day to day, I don't know how much Art's actually been doing for quite some time, and that's okay. Kudos to him. Who are they going to get? Let's talk about that before we get Paul Zeiss in here. Paul will be joining us in about 5 or 10 minutes. Who do the Steelers go after? All right. So I put a little tweet out earlier on the X page. Look, Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator at Seattle, is somebody. Mike McDaniel up at New England. Chris Shula, his name has come out. Joe Brady is another name. David Webb, quarterbacks coach at Denver. He's only 30 years old. Brian Flores, I'd love to see the Steelers interview him. I've talked about that they need to get an offensive coach, but Paul Zeiss mentioned it's, find the guy that makes the most sense. Take your time, go through your process, and get somebody, that's going to come in here and do a good job. You've got to go through your process of interviewing and vetting people, and once you do that, perhaps you will find somebody like they found Tomlin, right? He blew them away. Right? That was the story. He blew them away, and therefore they hired him. They didn't give the job to Russ Grimm, who everybody thought, and by all accounts, there were reports that he was going to get the job, and he ended up not getting the job. So, there's that to keep in mind. So you've got to go through the process of vetting your people, who you want to get, who you want to bring in. And when you can do that properly, you can maybe find yourself a pretty good head coach that's going to, it's going to take a little cleaning up, people. It's going to take a lot of cleaning hype. She's not. She'll tell you firsthand she isn't, Karen. It's a matter of just getting 8 or 10 candidates in here and conducting initial interviews over the phone, right? Whatever the Steelers' process is, 8 to 10 people minimum, at least. I'd love to see them interview a dozen people. I don't know if I necessarily want Mike McCarthy to come back in here. What about Kevin Stefanski? I might consider Stefanski. I consider Stefanski over McCarthy. But whoever they bring in here, folks, and I'll be curious as to who you think Todd Haley is getting some love as the coach should. I think I offended him earlier in our little group text. It was not my intention. Look, he did an effective job as coordinator here, right? But ultimately at the end of the day, they couldn't get over the hump. And it just goes to the head coach. It goes to the top. It just always does. You can blame coordinators all you want, right? Ultimately, a coach makes those hiring choices. So, at the end of the day, whoever they decide to bring in here, whatever the process is that the Steelers are going to go through, it will be thorough. Okay, it will be thorough, and that's what does separate them from a Las Vegas Raiders organization. That's what separates them from an Arizona Cardinals organization. That's what separates them from a Miami Dolphins organization or the Jets. These teams, these franchises, Cleveland, they churn through coaches because their front office is chaos and they make bad choices constantly. Right? Constantly. They make bad coaching choices. They make bad personnel decisions. They make bad draft picks. We have not had great drafts. We've had some hits and we've had some misses. Maybe 50-50, maybe over the last 10, 15 years. The end of the Colbert era wasn't necessarily great. Omar Khan, jury's still out. Kenny Gainwell, great pickup. Now they got to sign him again, right? They're going to have to throw money at him. But if Rodgers is not coming back, that probably takes care of that problem. So going through a thorough, diligent process to find the right candidate will happen in this organization. I am certain of that. Some of you want John Harbaugh, according to Ethan is King. I would talk to John Harbaugh. I don't know if I would hire him, but I would certainly gauge his interest. Why wouldn't you? He's won a Super Bowl. You could say that about, Mike McCarthy. I just think that Mike's time maybe has come and passed as a head coach, right? I think, and when you look at the track record, they've hired coaches in their 30s, and the last 3 have done pretty well. They might go with that same mindset. Although Flores is like 43 or 44 years old, if he's the guy, yeah, I'd sign up for that. As long as there's an understanding that he's got to go out and find a young, innovative offensive mind to change the offense. None of this triple tight end set stuff. Go find a number 2 wide receiver, right? And we haven't even talked about DK Metcalf and how he changed the trajectory of that game last night with that drop. My goodness. I said it instantaneously. It was an absolute, took the air right out of the building. Right out of the building. They go down and score a touchdown on that drive. It's 10-0. You're in total command of this game. And you could keep the pressure on C.J. Stroud, which they were doing effectively last night. They forced 3 turnovers, for crying out loud, from him. And I still like C.J. Stroud as a young quarterback. Third year in the league. He's now won playoff games in each of his first 3 seasons. This is his first road playoff win. And they got a real chance to go up to New England and beat that team and host a conference championship game against the Buffalo Bills, who are going to go to Denver and beat the Yonkos. That's just my prediction right there. That's your AFC title game. I'm saying it's going to be Buffalo and Houston. New England's not too shabby either, right? That's going to be an absolute war up there next week. I can't wait to see those games. That game will be on Sunday. Bills will be on Saturday. The Patriots and Texans is going to be a Donnybrook on Sunday. I mean, I'm going to strap myself in for that one, have myself a couple of, cold waters and a couple sodas. And we're going to strap in for 3.5 hours and watch those two teams just beat the tar out of one another. Should be a really good football game. Drop a comment if you would like. If you're on X, we're welcome to your comments on Facebook and also on YouTube as well. Imagine all of this. We just promoted Art Smith. No, they're going to gut the entire coaching staff. Whoever's coming in is going to bring in an entire staff, new staff. The coaches have gotten their last check here in Pittsburgh. I can pretty much assure you of that. I don't know if anybody will be retained. I don't think anybody will be retained, and nor should they, quite frankly. Terrell Austin, no. I think Art Smith, that is done. I think he's trying to interview or will be interviewing for the Tennessee position. Hey, best of luck to you, Art. It's the run has come to an end here in Pittsburgh for Mike Tomlin. 19 years. What a day. What an absolute day. Just a stunner. And, if you could feel the palpable tension building through the course of the morning, just listening to the fan early this morning and then, with Starkey, and then I had Andrew and Chris on. I tried to check out Mark's show for a few minutes, Mark Madden, just to kind of, gauge. I know Madden's gloating, Pony's relieved, Mueller somewhat relieved, I guess. It was long overdue. You're right. I get the sentiment. I've been trumpeting the horn for years, right? I've been saying it since 2017 when I was running for Behind the Steel Curtain. After the Jacksonville loss, I should have pulled that article up. That article, man, that thing did like obscene amount of traffic in 2017 when they lost that game. It had like 1,000 comments on it, and it was getting shared like crazy. And, people were calling me nuts and all kinds of other things, which is fine, right? I saw the writing on the wall years ago, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And again, Tomlin's record, Tomlin's success, all of that is well documented, and the laurels and the flowers are deserved, right? I'm not celebrating him leaving today. What I am grateful for is that this franchise is now going to get a chance to reset itself. They're going to get a chance to reset themselves, and they have been in a rut for a decade plus under Mike Tomlin. I'm sorry, right? The fallacy of 2016 and getting to the conference championship game only to get the brakes beaten off of you in New England was just, it was hard. Not to mention the fact that your last playoff win consisted of 6 field goals. They didn't even score a touchdown against Kansas City. They managed to win that game somehow with 6 field goals by Chris Boswell. Okay, if we get Paul Zeiss in here shortly, we'll take him. If not, I'm going to take us till about 8:30 tonight and then wrap up. Again, any of your comments are welcome. Marcus Freeman, Ethan is king, has already made it clear that he is not taking any NFL jobs. That he made that statement. It was either him or Notre Dame put that statement out today, and he's going to have a press conference tomorrow apparently, probably to re-clarify that. But he made that clear today. He's not going to the NFL. He's not going to the NFL. And I think we've seen it's very rare that a coach leaves college and is successful in the NFL, right? Jimmy Johnson is maybe the biggest example of that, right? You could say Barry Switzer, but he inherited Jimmy's team and won Super Bowl 30, right? He was only there for 4 years as well. Jimmy's probably the most successful, and Pete Carroll. All right, Pete left USC, went to Seattle, and won a Super Bowl there. So those two guys, were able to transition. And Pete had been in the NFL prior, of course, coached the Jets back in the 90s, and then he left and eventually went to USC. There might have been a stop in between there somewhere else, but there have been a handful of coaches that have left the college game and have gone on to be successful in the NFL, but you can count them literally on one hand. Who do you want to see the Steelers bring in here for an interview? You can leave your comments below. Paul Zeiss will be joining us here just for a few minutes. I don't want to take Paul very long. I know he's had a very long day. We'll bring Mr. Zeiss in here. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm very good, my man. How are you doing?
Has any team in the NFL fired their head coach and hired Mike Tomlin since 2:00 by any chance today?
No, and I think, it seems to me, John, the word seems to be, if you read the tea leaves, that he's probably going to sit out for a year and do TV. That this is him stepping away, maybe even just stepping away from coaching. Now, I don't believe that he's a Bill Cowher type. I don't think he's going to go to TV and stay. But one of the contrasts and one of the biggest things, the differences between Cowher and Tomlin. Cowher, are we there?
I like to give you. I'm producing now, and I like it when the guest is just kind of like front and center. But please go ahead.
I mean, it's just one of those things where I would tell you, Cowher was a guy who never was, and I was just trying to get this so we're streaming it live to my Twitter feed. But anyway,
thank you.
Cowher was a guy that was never the first in the office and never the last to leave. In other words, he wasn't lazy, but he wasn't one of these coaches that slept in his office. He wasn't one of these guys that was, there. If his daughters had, basketball games, he was there. He, had hobbies. He's an avid golfer. He's into the music scene and all that other stuff. There's a lot that he liked to do. And so I think when he got out, and of course his wife was, going through cancer, but when he got out, he got a taste of life, living life, spending time with your kids and your family and all that kind of stuff. And I think that he was like, I can make a lot of money doing this, and I only got to do it a few days a week,
right?
From 16, 17, 18 days a month, weeks a year, or whatever it is. You know what? I kind of like my life. I like, Sunday after the game, I don't got to go watch film. I don't got to go, start planning for the next game. Right. I don't got to go do all this stuff. So to me, I look at it like that, and I just say, man, it is really important to know your lifestyle, and like I said, Cowher was a golfer. He's a golfer. He likes to do a lot of stuff. Tomlin doesn't really have any hobbies. He's not a guy that really does a whole lot outside of football. He's a football guy. And he loves the art of being in the room watching film. He loves the art of putting together game plans. He loves the idea of, putting together a team, that is, going to go out, and he loves the competitive aspect of it. He's a guy that, to me, is going to be a football coach. Probably, I'll be shocked if he coaches this year. Now, never. I had somebody call me and say that, there's a chance, that Atlanta was going to try and talk to him. Well, that's fine. But my point is, he's a guy that can pick his job. Yeah, he's going to be able. He doesn't have to take a bad job. Doesn't have to take a job that doesn't have a quarterback. Doesn't have to, So. And also, I think he's stepping away because I think, he's got some things that he's just got going on in his life that he's just trying to, sort of sometimes you got to step back and take care of stuff. So, I don't think he'll be coaching another team this year, if you're asking me that. I honestly think he'll do the TV thing for a year.
Look, Sean Payton stepped away because of health reasons, right? And then after a year, presumably better, and wanted to get back into the game. Look, for Tomlin, if it's about just stepping back and taking care of some business, personal or otherwise, understandable, right? He's earned that right after 19 years. And again, I've been after him just about anybody else because of the lack of success in the postseason. His record speaks for itself. His Super Bowl victories, the 2 championship marches that he made to try and win a Lombardi, speak for themselves. You know, the fact that players, he did get more out of guys, right, that maybe other coaches wouldn't have gotten out of him. All of that speaks to what he still has and is tangible. And there are teams out there that would probably like to have a shot at that. I still want to think that if there is a scenario where there is a team that in his mind, and this could be in a few weeks, it could be in a month, that he says to his agent, I might be interested in talking to them.
Right.
Right, but you're saying, okay, take a year off for any number of reasons.
I mean, here's the thing. That's possible, honestly.
Okay.
Maybe he'll talk to a few teams.
Right.
But you know, like I said, I was surprised that Harbaugh jumped right. You know, it looks like he's going to jump right back into it, just because I think, you know, you take a year off. But you know what? These guys are wired differently, man.
Yeah, they
are.
are.
It's in your blood, and it's what you want to do. You know what? I could maybe see, but again, I everything that I've heard and talked to people around Tomlin, it's more sort of about 19 years is a long time, and he's, you know, been in the meat grinder really for the last 7 or 8, obviously. And you know, his kids are in a different stage of life now, and there's just a lot going on where he might just basically say, you know what, I'm going to sit out a year, do TV, collect whatever the check is that you get for TV. Now, the interesting thing is, I think even if he sits out a year, the Steelers still own his rights, I think. So they would have to work out a trade, which they obviously would be able to do that. But it would be interesting to see what a team would be willing to give for Mike Tomlin.
Well, that's the question, and I talked to Jerry about this in terms of speculation. A number one is a non-negotiable, right? Like that's absolute. If I'm the Steelers and you're willing to let teams talk with him. The other question I wanted to ask you: have we determined when he becomes absolutely free and clear, and the Steelers no longer have his rights?
I think 2 years. Okay, I think
so.
He's got 2 years on his deal. Yeah, I think that's what he has.
So the option does trigger in this scenario then. Is that correct? I guess that's what we're saying, right? Because so the Steelers are actually in a pretty good position, even though they have the draft this year and they have all these picks, and presumably, hey, look, if you could get somebody, if he likes somebody and the team can get, you know, a 1 and maybe a 3 or something, they have an arsenal of draft picks that they can go into in April and say, you know, package up a whole bunch, and now they're picking 1 or 2 or something like that, and now you got a chance to take. If the draft class quarterback-wise isn't as good, now you've got a marquee name at the first in the first 2 that, okay, if we had one of these 2, we can start to rebuild. But if they own the rights to Tomlin for 2 years, in a good position, especially if he does the year off and does want to come back at that point in time because he feels recharged, the Steelers still have an opportunity to get compensation for him. That's certainly a bonus, I think, for the franchise. And not that he owes them anything, Paul. He does not owe the Steelers that, but it's a consolation prize if somebody does want to take him over the next 2 seasons.
Well, again, yeah, I mean, you always have to see exactly what it is that, you know, you're going to get for him, right?
Yep.
And you're going to get something for him. That's the biggest thing. No matter what you think, I mean, you know, we sit here in, you know, Pittsburgh, and we've been watching this show up close and personal for 6, 7, 8, 9 years now, right?
Yeah.
But I would be willing to bet that the thought process around the league on Mike Tomlin is much different than it is here. So, you know, to me, what did they get for John Gruden? They got, what, 2 first-round picks, I think, or something?
Yes, absolutely,
so
they
my
did.
Point is, you know, if you can get 2 firsts and a third or a fourth, you know, you take those. And, you know, one of the things that's probably not been talked about enough, John, is the attractiveness of this job. Okay?
Right.
And I think one of the things that I'll tell you is that they need, and I'm talking about Omar and Andy Weidel and, you know, the whole group, they need to sit down in the next few days and write down or put together what their specific strategy is to address the quarterback job. What is your, do you have we don't need necessarily a name, but if I'm a coach coming to interview with you and I say, okay, I'm going to take this job and my options are going to be Will Howard and Mason Rudolph. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
so,
yeah, you're right.
So they basically have to figure out a way where they say, okay, here's the better way to do it. Here's what we're going to do. We're looking at, maybe trading up. We're looking at doing this. We're doing this. We're trying to do all these things, right? This is our plan. Because then they have a much better chance, I think, they have a much better chance of going out and getting a coach. Now, they're going to get a coach because they're the Steelers.
Right.
But I'm just telling you, you've got to, really dive in. And you've really got to be able to sell the idea that the job you have right now is the job that you want.
I agree.
So,
That's a great, and they have done it traditionally in a thorough way, right? Like I said this earlier, right? They're not the Raiders, they're not Arizona, they're not Miami, they're not Cleveland, who go through these cycles every couple of years. This team, I will say that, and I believe that this will be the case in this particular hire. They will take their time. They will go through a regimented process. Here's a list of, they probably have a list of 20 candidates, right? We want to make calls on these people. We want to ask these questions, right? There, whatever their process is, has been successful for them, and I'm sure that they're going to continue to follow that in this particular case. Anybody in particular you'd like to see them bring in, Paul? Before I know you've had a long day. One more question. Anybody you want to see them bring in?
We can talk about this for a few minutes.
Okay.
I think, unless you got to go, I mean,
No.
I've heard, a couple names thrown around. There's always because it's Pittsburgh, we have to have the Pittsburgh guy, Mike McCarthy, and just. Right. But here's the thing: the other guy name I've heard, was Jeff Hafley. Obviously, has ties to Wani and Pitt. When the last 3 or 4 years, when I would tell people that I think the Steelers probably need to move on from Mike Tomlin, the number one response would always be, well, he'll get a job in the next 30 seconds. And then the number two response is, well, who are you going to get to hire? Who are you going to get that's better? Who's out there that's better? You're not getting Andy Reid, yada, yada. Okay.
Right.
Do you know what my answer is always? Do you know who the Steelers need to go get? A young Mike Tomlin.
There you go.
Because at the end of the day, John, and you followed as close as anybody, and you always have, right?
Yes.
If I'd have given you a piece of paper when Bill Cowher retired and say, write down the 10 names you'd like to see here, right? Mike Tomlin would not have been, nobody knew who the hell he was.
No,
right.
And
if I gave it to you, I gave it to 1,000 Steeler fans and said, give me 10 names who you want to see get this job. Do you know what? I don't know that Mike Tomlin would appear in the 10,000 names that were written. Because nobody knew who the hell he was.
Right.
There's great coaches out there that are, rising the ladder, that are smart. Maybe they're not a coordinator yet, although he was a coordinator. You know what I mean? It's a quarterback coach, whatever. That owners that have had success look at and say, that dude's got the it factor. So to me, and I think one other interesting thing is the Steelers have hired their last 4 coaches have all been 38 or younger when they were hired.
That's right.
They hire young up-and-comers,
yep.
And they should continue. That's why all these goofballs, Kurt Signetti, first of all, why would he leave what he's doing? I mean, he's 64 years old. Secondly, the fact that he is, would even entertain it, when he's got, didn't he just sign like a 10-year, $11 million deal?
Huge
you know
extension,
what?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, John, given that it's Indiana football,
they'll never get rid of him.
Especially if he wins one more game.
Right.
He could go 6-6. It's the rest of his career, and they're still building the statue to him.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, it would.
He's got job security. He's a guy that's worked his way there. Why would he take this job? These are all John, I hope we do more of these videos because these are always my favorite discussions. When people want to throw names out there, who should this and who – I always just like to say, okay, let's logically talk this through. Forget about sources. Let's logically talk this through. The Steelers hired 4 guys, and the last 4 guys have all been 38 or younger. They've all been guys who are up-and-comers. They've all been relative newcomers or unknowns. Now they're going to hire a 64-year-old college coach? I mean, come on, man. So to me, I just think, John, I've heard some, there's a couple of coordinators, I guess, in Seattle. There's, one of, I guess, San Francisco's coordinator. There's, I read all these names, and they all just sort of run together. But to me, when they hired Mike Tomlin, nobody knew who the hell he was. And really, nobody knew anything about him.
Right.
But guess what? He came, he blew them away in their interviews, and they said, this guy's got the it factor. So to me, I think the idea that you can't replace Mike Tomlin is ridiculous because you know what? Probably said the same thing when Bill Cowher retired. Probably said the same thing when Chuck Noll retired. Now, I will say this, John. This job is not as good as the job Mike Tomlin inherited.
Right. It is. Okay. You're right.
It's not as good as the job that even Bill Cowher inherited in some ways. Bill Cowher didn't inherit quite what Mike Tomlin did, but at the end of the day, if you think about it, I mean, Mike Tomlin is somebody who I think came out of nowhere and was really just really smart. He's obviously dynamic in his delivery and everything else, and he blew them away. So the Steelers will be able to hire somebody. Again, this offseason is a couple of things, John. Number one, figure out the quarterback spot, not another patchwork guy that you're going to bring in for 10 days, for 1 year or whatever. Okay? Number two, what are you doing with Watt, Hayward, and some of the other old guys? What are you doing? Right. Number three, right, who's your number 2 receiver? Number 4, who's your coach and 2 coordinators? Yep. So this is a big offseason for the Steelers because, I look at it, what the Penguins did, and they finally fired, or moved on from Mike Sullivan, however you want to say it. And they basically said, we're going to hire a guy who's good at developing young players. Maybe, we don't know if he's going to actually win NHL games, and he's done a good job doing that, but we're going to hire a guy. We're going to hire a guy whose specialty is players that look like our players. He's able to work with them and get them better. That's what you want to do. So to me, the Steelers have to figure out what they want to be. Do they want to continue to be the 9-10 win team that never wins in the playoffs and just sort of floats above mediocrity, or do they want better? Do they want more than that? And if they want more than that, they might have to commit to less than that. Because guess what? I always say to the people who say, well, the Steelers, pride themselves. They haven't had a non-loser. They've had They've haven't had a non-winning season since 2003. Okay. And what happened? They ended up with Ben Roethlisberger. Pretty sure I'd take that trade every time.
Every time. Absolutely. Listen, I'd love to sit through a 4-13 campaign, right? Get a top 5 pick. Right. I'm okay with if they did that 2 straight years and they found a top flight defensive player to go with a number 1 quarterback that is of Caleb Williams, is of Drake May, and Malik Willis is getting a lot of buzz here. Cam Ward, who's just wrapping up season 1 in Tennessee. Sure, I'd sit through 3-14 if I knew I had to have it. If I was getting a top 3 pick all day long, because it beats what they've been going through for the past 15 seasons, which is somewhere between 16 and 22, right? And it's been a death spiral. Just a couple more minutes with Paul Zeiss before we let him go. I know most of us woke up today and the wrath was coming, and we who knows? I mean, this was a little bit out of left field. I know you're a little closer to the pulse than I am, but ultimately the decision. Were you shocked at 2:00 today? Were you surprised?
Well, again, I would tell you this. I don't necessarily think I was shocked.
Okay.
And the reason why was I thought last night, if you were at the stadium, there was sort of an aura of this is the end. You know what I mean? And again, I mean, I've talked to a number of people over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks who basically said he is a guy who right now is just, again, got some things spinning and got some stuff in his life and kind of feels like it's time. So, you know, as I said last night on my post-game show, you know, with the Post-Gazette, I said very clearly, he's going to walk. If he's going to not be the coach next year, it's because he's going to walk away. You know, and he did. I mean, I know there's all kinds of conspiracies, and you know, maybe he sat down too with with Art Rooney, and he kind of found out and realized, boy, you know what, he's going to ask me to do a lot. And I don't know that I want to go through all these changes to try and make this work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that happen. I mean, Harbaugh basically was fired. But again, Harbaugh was given the option, change your staff, right?
Right.
Change
100%.
your staff. And if you change your staff, we'll give you 1 more year. And he said, I don't want to do that. And again, I'm sure part of that was, I've been here 18 years, man. You know?
Yeah.
We've won a Super Bowl. We've had a lot of success. We've done a lot of things. I mean, if you don't trust me by now, you don't trust me. So maybe I need to go somewhere else. Maybe I need to change the scenery. That's what happens there.
Hey, just out of curiosity, I'm just kind of reading a few posts on X here. It looks like you're right. He is under contract through 27. Sean Payton, when he stepped away from the job in New Orleans, Denver paid a first-round and a second-round pick for him. So, yeah, there is precedent, and because he's under contract through 27, if somebody wants to talk to him, there's opportunity there for the Steelers to gain compensation. All right, Paul, thanks so much for your time. You've been great this year. I can't thank you enough. We're going to continue to keep doing this stuff. I hope to have some sort of announcement in a few weeks to everybody about what the next steps are. I'm going to keep doing this show, but I can't thank you enough for coming on this evening and giving us your insight. You're a knowledgeable man, and you've been around a long time, and it's good to have your opinion on our show. I appreciate you. Okay?
I'll do this show anytime you want, buddy.
All right, thanks, Paul. Thank you. I appreciate it. Paul Zeiss of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, one of the good guys. And I'm not kidding when I say that. I've known Paul a long time. And there's just so many good people in this business. There's some bad people in this business. A lot of them are the suits that run things. But in terms of actual people that churn out content, that report, that, you know, and Paul does other things now as well. But just a solid guy. Paul knows his stuff inside and out, and I trust his opinion. And if you're watching us for the first time, if you're joining us via his X account, we are Steel City Sunday. This is Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. My name is John Phillips. We are here on Mondays and Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. Mondays and Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. We will be moving to 4 nights a week here by the end of the month. I'm excited to be able to do this again for people, just to get reaction from folks that are, sports fans, right? I've spent, off and on in my career talking sports on radio, television, at Channel 11 with John Fedko, doing a phone zone for a number of years. I'm just happy to be back doing this. I'm really happy to be back doing this kind of stuff, even if it's just for an hour a night, a few nights a week. We're going to build our channel. And as I showed you earlier, look, if you're on X right now and you are on YouTube, go give us a follow. I would love to get us to 500 people by baseball season. We're at like 106, 107 followers on our YouTube channel. Take 30 seconds if you're jumping on here over on Paul's X page, and there's a bunch of you over there. Please, and that's, Paul's gracious. He doesn't have to share his X feed with me, but he does that. And so, we get a chance to have a new audience looking at what we're doing, right? We just got done doing 18 Steeler pregame shows Our Steel City Sunday show got us launched 4 hours before every Steelers kickoff, and we're going to do it in 2026. We'll probably start in the preseason. We will do 4 hours of live coverage in the fall. It'll be a pregame show only, and we may actually jump into calling the games while they're broadcasting. I'm thinking about how this is all going to work out. We'll see, but I would love it if some of you would give us a follow over on our YouTube channel. All of the social media sites are at Steel City Sunday, but if you are on YouTube and you check out shorts, and I know you're watching poker videos and probably hentai, whatever, and you've got whatever you like to watch, over maybe it's Canadian curling or something. You've got a channel that you really just dig. Go check us out on YouTube. Please give us a follow over there, like and subscribe. I can't say that enough. It helps us out as we are just getting this endeavor out, and I want to pour more time into all of this, and it helps when we have sponsors. I showed the graphic earlier. North Park Lounge, Richland, Hilltop Event Center got us started, right? They gave us the funding that we needed for me to pay for guys like Paul Zeiss, John Fedko. If you're just joining us, John Fedko joining us in our pregame, Jerry DePaula, a regular, Mike Oste, managing editor of West Virginia Sports Now, which is part of the Pittsburgh Sports Now family of websites. We had an NFL insider from SiriusXM's NFL Radio on every single week. Zig Fracassi joins us every single week. Todd Haley came on. Todd worked for free. He didn't have to, but he did. He joined us about 4 or 5 weeks in, and that man, I can't thank Todd Haley enough. Right? Todd lends credibility to our whatever it is we're doing. Right? We don't have massive followings like Urinating Tree and some of the other guys that have been on YouTube for a long time building an audience. Right? And I don't expect anything to happen overnight, but I would like to get the 500 subs on YouTube by the beginning of baseball season. And I'm telling you right now, I'm a determined guy. I'm going to find some additional sponsors. We're going to have more programming. I think I like the live aspect of live programming instead of doing podcasts. The podcast, our stuff's archived on YouTube. If you want to go check it out, you can. Right? You can come to our X page and find something if you really want to. I'm not getting into the podcasting space. I'm not interested in it because there's so much out there. I think live programming is where it is. And you can go on X and you can go on YouTube and you can go on Facebook and you can provide that to people and they'll check it out. If you know that at 7 o'clock, 4 nights a week, you can come here and you like what you're hearing, you'll find me. And I'm going to have guests. I'm booking all kinds of guests. I'm working on a professional wrestler right now. If I can land this guy, I'm going to mark out all day long. Like I'm a huge wrestling guy. I grew up in the 80s, right? I love talking to guys of that nature. I like finding interesting guests. I'm always going to try to find guests to bring on the show. We had a guy on to launch us a few weeks ago, about a month ago, John Ziegler, who talked about the Jerry Sandusky case. That was a pretty good audience for us. We had about 600-700 people checking us out in our initial broadcast. And this has definitely been a big one, obviously. The Mike Tomlin story has tremendous traction. Everybody's interested in hearing what people have to say. Again, having covered Tomlin, having covered Cowher, was there at the end, obviously, in Chuck Noll's era. I've been around a long time. I've been around 30 years. And I'm fortunate off and on here and there I've been able to work, right? If you pick up a Tribune Review and you read a soccer story about the Riverhounds, you're going to see my name because I covered the team this year. So I've always managed to find a space somewhere, and now I've found this avenue to broadcast live again, and it's invigorating. As my wife says, it's a hobby right now, and I'm not, it's not about making money. It's about just kind of building out this platform and just providing content that hopefully, and if you're on X at Steel City Sunday, give us a follow there. Come check us out 4 nights a week starting at the end of January. But right now, Mondays and Tuesdays with Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. I'm going to take a few more comments from you. This is a broadcast, Ethan. It is a broadcast. And I am excited to spend more time with all of you folks. And thank you, Ethan. You're welcome to always come out here. We need Todd Haley as the head coach coming in from Gavin. I'm sure Todd would like to get back into the league. And I don't blame him. You know, he's a football guy. You know, his dad growing up around it. I mean, you know, I'm sure that would be something that would excite him if he had an opportunity to do that again. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap this up here in the next few minutes. I don't know what the future holds, but I will tell you this: brighter days are ahead. Okay, I'm happy that Mike Tomlin made a decision that was good for him. If he was upset at how the fans have reacted, don't take it personal, Mike. Don't take it personal, because a fan base of this caliber wants a winner. And that's not to say that you weren't. You just weren't winning playoff games. You just weren't winning playoff games. And every coach has a life cycle. And 19 years is the exception to the rule, Mike Tomlin. Be proud of the work you did, okay? For good or for bad, for better or for worse, whatever the last 9 seasons have been, whatever the last 15 seasons have been, take solace in the fact that you are one of the greatest coaches in the history of the National Football League. I've given you your flowers a few times this year, and I'm willing to do that because it's warranted, okay? Your time just ran out here. Whatever it was that you were doing over the last 9 seasons was not working, Mike. And maybe, just maybe, a year off and a new avenue, a new location with different ownership and different players might resonate. And you may find that spark again and find that formula again that leads you to great success and back to trying to win a Lombardi trophy. And I don't have any ill will against Mike Tomlin, and I've always said that his coaching ability is on display every week when he can get the best out of his teams in situations where his back's against the wall, right? We could talk about all the bad stuff, but ultimately these teams have been very marginal and probably should not have won 9 or 10 games, and probably should have not made the playoffs or won a division title here and there. And that's a testament to Mike Tomlin. It is a testament to Mike Tomlin, and I am just saying right now, Mike Tomlin, I wish you the best of luck. I really think that you will find another avenue. I think that we are going to find a new head coach. Gaming headset mic sounds really bad. Good content. Well, I'm going to try to bring the volume down. Maybe it's because I'm shouting a little bit more, DJ. I am going to work on a new microphone that's more of a handheld here that kind of sits. But I appreciate the feedback, DJ. It is something that I do think about. I think about the quality of the broadcasts, and I am working on that sort of thing. I've, in the fall or in the summertime when I started trying to put this idea together, I talked to a production company up in Wexford. I'm going to revisit with them. One thing about me, folks, okay? One thing about me, I will do it right? I wanted to get on the air and prove that we could do this, and we have done that. The next step is to improve the quality of the broadcast overall, the aesthetics, and continue to bring you great content. All right, my daughter's walking in. My wife is walking in. That means you want to come over and say hi to 1,200 people right now watching this? My wife says hello. She says, don't turn this into a hobby. Turn this into a regular thing. I want to thank everybody for paying me a few minutes here on the broadcast tonight. I can't thank everybody enough. I can't thank Paul enough for sharing our content on his X page. It means a great deal because there's 1,200 of you kind of checking us out right now. I want to continue to talk, but I think we're going to wrap this up for the evening. I'll be back here tomorrow at 7 o'clock. I'm going to try to have a few more guests. We'll talk a little bit more tomorrow. It'll only be an hour as we will have an 8 p.m. show tomorrow at 8 o'clock here on the channel. It is our weekly Wednesday broadcast of Pittsburgh Sports Desk. That's Bill Aiken's show. You can check him out on this channel tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. But I'm going to come back tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. with another edition of Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. I want to thank Jerry DePaula. I want to thank John Murgis, who had the story first this morning on his X page. Go follow Murgis John on X at 7:20 a.m. He tweeted this out. And he got Adam Schefter right on top of all of that. John Murgis, everybody. I mean, what a guy. Down there in South Florida, retired, tweets it out at 7:20. Hey, Tomlin's done. And Adam Schefter will tell you about it later today. And sure enough, he was absolutely right. Okay. Pay attention to It's a Wrap Sports. It's a Wrap Sports is the reason why we're able to broadcast. I can't thank Maddie B enough for letting me go an extra 50 minutes tonight. It's a Wrap Sports handles all of our content and programming tonight at 9 o'clock. If you like Philadelphia news, obviously they're making news over there with the end of their season. The Final Word with Maddie B, 5 nights a week at 9 o'clock. That'll be just a few minutes away here on the It's a Wrap Sports Network. All right. See you, everybody. I appreciate everything. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. We will talk with you tomorrow at 7 p.m. here on Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. Until then, we'll see you mañana.